Imagine this. A small, quiet town in northern Italy. It's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where life is simple, predictable, safe. But on a chilly November evening in 2010, that illusion of safety was shattered. A 13-year-old girl named Yara Gambirasio vanished without a trace after leaving her gymnastics practice. What followed was one of the most extensive and controversial criminal investigations in Italian history, a story of secrets, science, and shocking revelations. This is the case of Yara Gambirasio, a mystery that continues to haunt Italy to this day. It was November 26, 2010, a Friday evening like any other. Yara Gambirasio, a promising young gymnast, had just finished practice at her local gym in Brembate di Sopra, a small town near Milan. She texted a friend, promising to bring a stereo to the gym the next day. But that day never came. When Yara failed to return home that evening, her parents knew something was wrong. She was responsible, disciplined, not the kind of teenager to disappear without an explanation. Panic set in as the hours passed, and soon, the entire town joined in the search for the missing girl. Quote, "Despite exhaustive efforts by police and volunteers, there was no sign of Yara. Days turned into weeks. Then, 3 agonizing months later, on February 26, 2011, a grim discovery was made. In a field just 10 kilometers from her home, Yara's lifeless body was found. An autopsy revealed that Yara had been beaten and left to die in the cold. But one clue would change everything. On her clothing, forensic investigators found traces of DNA that didn't belong to her. It was the first real lead in a case that had gripped the nation. The discovery of the DNA marked the beginning of what would become one of the most ambitious and expensive forensic investigations in history. With no other evidence to rely on, the police launched a massive DNA screening operation. They collected samples from nearly 22,000 people, yes, 22,000, in a desperate attempt to find a match. It was an uphill battle. DNA is like a fingerprint, unique to each individual, but it can also point to relatives. And that's where things got interesting. After months of testing, investigators found a partial match. The DNA belonged to someone who was closely related to the killer. This breakthrough led them to a local bus driver named Giuseppe Garanoni. There was just one problem. Giuseppe had been dead for 11 years. Investigators now had to solve a puzzle within a puzzle. If Garanoni was the killer's father, who was his child? The investigation took a bizarre turn as police delved into Garanoni's personal life. Described as a ladies' man, Garanoni had reportedly been involved with multiple women. Detectives compiled a list of over 500 women he might have had relationships with, hoping to find the mother of the killer. After months of testing and interviews, they finally found her, Esther Arzafi, a local woman who had 2 children. One of them was Massimo Bossetti, a construction worker who lived in the area. When Bossetti's DNA was tested, it was an exact match to the sample found on Yara's clothing. In June 2014, Massimo Bossetti was arrested and charged with Yara's murder. The case seemed closed, at least to the prosecution. But Bossetti insisted he was innocent, claiming he had no idea how his DNA ended up at the crime scene. In court, he famously said, "I might be stupid, an idiot, ignorant, but I'm not a killer." Despite his pleas, the evidence against him was damning. In 2016, Bossetti was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. For many, the DNA evidence was enough to prove his guilt. But for others, the case was far from clear-cut. Bossetti's conviction hasn't silenced the skeptics. His defense team has repeatedly challenged the validity of the DNA evidence, arguing that it may have been contaminated or mishandled. They've also pointed out the lack of other evidence connecting Bossetti to the crime. No witnesses, no motive, no murder weapon. Earlier this year, Bossetti's attorneys requested a re-examination of the DNA samples, claiming that new tests could exonerate their client. But so far, the courts have denied these requests, leaving many to wonder, could the wrong man be behind bars? The murder of Yara Gambirasio has left a lasting mark on Italy. It's a case that highlights the power of forensic science and its limitations. While some see it as a triumph of modern technology, others view it as a cautionary tale about the dangers of relying too heavily on DNA evidence. Netflix's documentary The Yara Gambirasio Case, Beyond Reasonable Doubt, has reignited public interest in this haunting story. It dives deep into the investigation, the trial, and the lingering questions that continue to divide public opinion. So, what do you think? Was justice served, or does doubt still linger? The case of Yara Gambirasio is a stark reminder of the complexities of truth and justice. One thing is certain: her memory lives on, a symbol of a community's grief and resilience. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that keep you on the edge of your seat. Thank you for watching The CD Show.